A small bear named Chewing stood in front of a massive gorilla and asked nervously, "Have you seen my father?" The gorilla suddenly panicked and began shouting before stammering fearfully, "We haven't seen him." But Ching narrowed his eyes angrily and shouted, "You're lying." Theo watched the scene in shock while tension filled the gorilla's face. Ching said angrily, "I didn't even tell you what happened to my father, so how did you know?" Without hesitation, he raised the stick in his hand and struck the gorilla hard on the head. The gorilla collapsed to the ground, screaming in pain. Theo stared in disbelief and said, "You didn't have to hit him because of that." But Ching tightened his grip on his stick and coldly replied, "Liars deserve punishment." Suddenly, a deep voice thundered from behind them, "Who dares cause trouble in my village?" Everyone froze in fear. A gigantic gorilla appeared before them, wearing a golden crown and carrying an enormous staff. A title floated above him, Leader of the Gorilla Tribe, Goron, Floor 77. One of those standing nearby stepped forward and asked once more, "Have you seen my father?" Goron immediately became furious. "You come to my land and terrorize my people?" He raised his giant weapon high into the air and roared, "I'll crush you!" Goron swung down with terrifying force, but at the final moment, one of the Minotaur King's soldiers stepped forward and blocked the attack with his bare hands, creating an enormous shockwave. At the same time, a female Minotaur attacked Goron from behind. Goron barely dodged the strike. His eyes widened in surprise. "That strength? That speed? Are you from the upper floors?" The Minotaur soldier answered calmly, "Yes, but we didn't come here to fight." Still suspicious, Goron grabbed his giant wing-shaped fan and spun it violently. Theo shouted in shock, "What is that?" Goron roared furiously, "Get out of our land!" Powerful winds exploded outward, turning into a terrifying storm. The Minotaur soldiers lost their belongings, and Ching's backpack burst open, sending his snacks flying into the sky: carrots, strawberries, and sweet potatoes. Theo screamed in panic as he spun helplessly through the air. When the storm finally stopped, Goron planted his giant weapon into the ground and mocked them. How weak! Nearby, Chewing began crying. His siblings had been separated, and even his snacks had been blown away. Goron walked toward him and noticed that he was still standing firmly with his stick in hand. You endured my storm," he narrowed his eyes. "You may be small, but you're not easy to deal with." Then he declared angrily, "In that case, I'll fight with my full power." Goron charged forward while raising his enormous weapon, while little Ching stood perfectly still. Ching trembled with anger because his snacks were gone. "You're truly awful." Goron roared and swung his weapon down with overwhelming force. But suddenly, his eyes widened in shock. Ching had stopped the gigantic attack with his tiny stick. Ching's eyes glowed with fury. "You're even worse than liars." He swung his stick with incredible speed, knocking Goron's weapon away before smashing his head with a powerful strike. Goron's weapon shattered. The impact launched him backward until he crashed violently into the ground. With a single strike, the gorilla chief fell defeated. Meanwhile, Chewing remained standing quietly, gripping his stick tightly. Elsewhere near a large cage, Sejan stood holding a banana while staring in disbelief. So, all of that really happened? In front of him, countless monkeys knelt on the ground. Their chief spoke while nearly crying. All of this was written in an ancient prophecy. He explained that the monkey tribe had suffered from severe famine because of a long drought. "We believe our savior will appear and free us from hunger." He looked toward the empty sky sadly. "For so long, not even a single drop of rain has fallen. There aren't even clouds anymore." Then he pulled out an ancient wooden tablet. "Our tribe inherited a prophecy long ago. A strange, tailless monkey carrying a banana will appear during the drought and bring prosperity." Sajan awkwardly looked at the banana in his hand. "This is weird. I'm not even a monkey." Suddenly, all the monkeys knelt before him and begged, "Please forgive our disrespect. Save our tribe." The monkey chief suddenly shouted, "Bring the special meal." A small monkey arrived carrying dried yellow fruit and black seeds on tree leaves. Sajan blinked. "What is this?" The little monkey answered shyly, "It's simple, but please enjoy it." Sajan picked up a piece and smiled. "Thank you, I'll try it." Everyone watched nervously. The moment he took a bite, his eyes widened. "What? This is dried mango." After taking a closer look at the food, Sajan's eyes widened in surprise as he said, It's so sweet and unbelievably soft. Then he noticed the black seeds placed beside it and asked curiously, "And these watermelon seeds? Is this considered a special meal for you?" The monkey chief answered sadly, "In the past, our tables were filled with fresh and juicy fruits, but the sudden drought took everything away from us. We missed the days of mangoes, watermelons, and bananas, when our land was overflowing with blessings." Hearing that, Sejan opened his eyes wide in shock. Wait, are there really mangoes, watermelons, and bananas on floor 77? All the monkeys looked at him with hopeful eyes. Sejan smiled confidently, stood up, and said excitedly, "Great, then I'll make that prophecy come true." Elsewhere, Theo was hanging from a tree deep inside a dense forest after being blown away by the storm. Shivering in fear, he muttered, "I thought I was going to die." Carefully, he jumped down from the tree and landed safely on the ground. As he walked through the forest, he glanced behind himself uneasily. In the end, we're the ones who ended up in the worst situation. He pulled out his compass and sighed. At least I hope everyone else is okay. I suffered more than anyone. Then he thought firmly, the only thing I can do now is find President Park. As he continued walking through the forest, he suddenly felt an unusual coldness despite the intense sunlight. The sun is blazing, so why do I feel cold? Suddenly the compass in his hand shook violently and began glowing with a bright golden light. Theo lifted his head. A massive crimson rocky mountain stood in front of him. He stretched his paw forward and whispered, "Something is reacting strongly to that mountain." He hesitated briefly before shaking his head. Finding President Park comes first. He looked toward the sky and shouted, "I hope everyone is safe." Elsewhere, near the travel gate on floor 77, Iona arrived alongside Genoba, the master of Weiss Tower. Genoba wiped sweat from his forehead and complained, "This floor is unbelievably hot." Suddenly, both of them noticed someone lying on the ground. Iona gasped in shock. Lord Gorin! The gorilla tribe chief was lying unconscious. Genoba immediately rushed toward him and extended his hands. A green healing light flowed from his magic. Moments later, Gorin slowly regained consciousness. Genoba asked worriedly, "Are you all right?" Iona shouted angrily, "Who did this to you?" Gorin trembled and answered weakly, "Some strangers came to our tribe and started causing trouble." He lowered his head. "I tried to teach them a lesson, but I was the one who ended up defeated." Iona froze in disbelief. "How is that possible? You're the strongest warrior of the gorilla tribe." Still trembling, Gorin warned them fearfully, "Be careful, the Black Bull and the Crimson Bear." Iona and Genoba exchanged confused looks. Suddenly, a tremendous explosion echoed across the land. Dark clouds covered the entire sky. Fear immediately filled Gorin's eyes. "No, not again!" He started running in panic. Genoba looked upward in confusion. "What are you afraid of?" Gorin slowly sat on the ground while holding his giant broken wooden fan. "My fan." His voice became heavy with sadness. "My daughter, I don't know if it's because she feels lonely, but she cries a lot lately." He sighed deeply. "That's why I always used my fan to push away dark clouds, so the sunlight could return." Tears rolled down his face. "As a father, I couldn't even find someone suitable for her." Holding the broken pieces of his fan tightly, he whispered painfully, "And now, I can't even protect my people anymore." He raised his head toward the dark sky and shouted, "I'm too weak. Forgive this useless father, my daughter." Iona and Genoba stood silently behind him. Elsewhere, Sajan raised his hand toward the sky. A bright blue magical glow wrapped around his fingers. Looking upward confidently, he said, "Skill, rain creation." The moment he activated it, rain poured heavily across the entire region. Water finally returned to the dry land. The monkeys exploded with joy. "It's raining!" One monkey cried while staring at the falling water. "It's been so long." The younger monkeys ran around Sajan excitedly. "Park Sajan! Park Sajan!" Sajan slowly closed his eyes. A peaceful smile spread across his face. "Honestly, this doesn't feel bad at all." Standing proudly beneath the rain with his hands on his waist, Sajan burst into laughter. Meanwhile, monkeys danced happily around him. At that same moment, Theo spotted the rainfall from deep within the forest. Slowly stepping out from behind the bushes, he tightly held his compass. His large green eyes widened in shock. He looked at the sky, then toward the distance. Questions filled his mind. What exactly is happening in this world?